Hello! Very recently I bought this set of watercolours from a local store in Melbourne called Zart. This is a set that they have had made for themselves. It's probably a student colour water set, but I am absolutely dying to try these out. I haven't tested these at all. I don't know what they're going to be like, so I thought we would do that today together. It's a set of 18. You can see they are very large blocks. That is apparently the actual size, and I will show you in a moment that it really is. They're made in China, but they are specifically made for this company. There's their website. I'll also put it in the link below. It says, convenient and portable paint set, highly pigmented, bright and vivid colours, mixable, long-lasting blocks, studio quality. Usually if it says studio quality, that means it's a student grade, not an artist grade. But this is the swatch that they have of it. It's actually on the back of the tin. This is the front of the tin, and I think it's a really pretty colour, a lovely dark blue. It always takes me a minute to get this thing open. But inside, check them out, they're huge. They definitely look like student blocks to me. They smell like student blocks, and I am so curious to paint them out. I'm really hoping that they're not going to be chalky, because that would be really annoying. They cost $39.95, but I paid a bit less because mine was the display tin and she took some discounts off it, which was really nice. I've already drawn out a swatch chart in my Etcher sketchbook. This has got 100% cotton paper, it's cold press, and it is a really good indicator as to how these paints are going to go on a nice quality paper, bearing in mind that paper quality is probably the most important thing over paint quality. So if the paper doesn't work, then the paints are not going to work with it, regardless of how good they are. So hopefully these will work well on here. Like I said, I have not tried these at all. I've not seen them swatched out anywhere. I don't know what they're going to be like. They do not have colour names. I left some spaces here that I might actually write in some colour names that I will make up for myself afterwards. Let us get into it. I've got my water here and my paintbrush, and I will swatch them out and talk about them as we go. Just quickly, I just remembered to put a black line on here for the white paint, so I'm going to let that dry. You can see I already started painting the white, and then I realised that we're not going to be able to see it, so I'm going to do all the other colours first, and I'll come back to the white to see whether it's opaque or completely transparent. So I did name all the colours, and I'll read them out as I go along. The first one here I'm calling Lemon Yellow. It's a very cool light yellow, which always looks like lemon to me. And it took a little while to get it going, but once these were wet they worked a lot better, and this time I actually remembered to wet the page first. This one's a deeper yellow. I called this one, funnily enough, Deep Yellow. It's a much warmer one, similar to Hansa Yellow, medium, something like that. But I really like that one. It's a good solid yellow. The next one here is a deeper orange colour, but leaning towards the red, so I called this one Vermilion. It looks more orange on camera, but in real life it is a deeper red colour. And then I went into the next one, wetting that paper first, and this one actually spread quite well, which a lot of them didn't, but for this one I just called it red, basically. It was pretty much the standard red you'd get that's not too warm and not too cool, right in the middle, maybe like a Perol red or something like that, but I didn't give them anything too scientific of a name. And this one was a much cooler one, so this looked exactly like quinacridone rose, so I just called it rose. They're pretty colours, and they seem to be pretty transparent as well, so I was liking the yellows and the reds on this top layer. And then I painted in the white. It's not too bad, it got some coverage, but once it dried you could see how the black is still showing through there, so you need a few layers. Now that magenta is probably the one that ran the most in the water, and definitely a magenta colour there. I like this one a lot. I thought this was a really pretty colour, and this one seemed very transparent to me. Going into the next one here, a really bright purple, which to me looked like my old nemesis Cobalt Violet, but a lot easier to paint out, so I called this one Violet just on its own. That is such a pretty colour too, and also incredibly transparent. So then we started going into the blues. And this one was very much obviously an ultramarine, so that one wasn't hard to name at all. It's a nice rich blue and it got good coverage. Oh, you could see I splashed some up on that yellow there, and then the water was dirty from my brush. even though I'd rinsed it numerous times, so I was having fun. But this next one was such a deep blue. I really like this colour, and when it dries it looks a lot like Prussian blue, so that's what I called this one, and it's such a pretty one. And the next one is a much lighter blue, which to me is probably something like phthalo blue mixed with white, but I ended up calling it cerulean, or it could be sky blue, and that's quite a pretty one too. The next one along looks quite similar, but this to me looked exactly like a cobalt teal, so I named it teal. And those two are actually quite similar on the spectrum together, though the teal is a greener shade. And into the greens. This one, I was stumped for a name. I originally thought sap green, but then looking at it, it's a bit too dark for sap green, so I picked hooker's green instead, because that's what it looks like to me. The next one was a much brighter green. It could be a spring green, something like that, but I ended up calling it phthalo green light because I have other paints in my professional ranges that look just the same, and this one coming up is definitely a phthalo green. It's possibly towards the blue shade, and now I think about it, I could have also called that one Vermilion. At any rate, very staining, and I had to wash my brush out multiple times again. Going into this next green, this is my favourite one. This looks exactly like forest green out of Sennelier's watercolour range, so that's what I called this one. I think that's probably my favourite out of the four greens there. There were a bit too many greens because here we only have one brown, and this to me looked exactly like a burnt umber. So I kind of wish there was a second brown in this set. I think they could have got rid of either the hooker's green or the phthalo green light. And lucky last, here's a black. I just called it lamp black. It could be a Mars black for all I know, but the second layer went on much darker and it just felt like a lamp black to me. So those are my very scientific names for these paints. And then I tried to lift them and they would not come off the paper, so they're not very good for lifting purposes. I am incapable of painting out a neat swatch sheet. I always end up with bits going over. Never mind, it doesn't matter too much. I also fixed up that deep yellow because I'd made a mess. And here they all are fully dried. They're pretty good. I mean, if I lift them up a little bit, you can see, hopefully on here, especially like on the Prussian blue, it looks like there's a bit of filler coming through. You can just see there's a little bit of chalkiness on some of them. It's not too bad by any means. I've seen paints that are much chalkier than this, but there is a definite difference between these and professional paints. As a beginner set, I would say this one's quite good. Now, my only grievance with it is that there is one too many greens as far as I'm concerned. If they'd taken out one of these greens and included perhaps a burnt sienna or even an ochre colour, I think it would be better. And that's just a small nitpick, so nothing major there. The white's not super great, as you can see. I mean, if you want it to be opaque, you're going to have to do far more than just the one layer. So they could get rid of that white and include a different colour. I never find white to be a very useful colour in watercolours. Occasionally I use it if you want to make a pastel colour, I guess. But anyway, that's just my own opinion. So as per usual, I will do a painting with them so we can get a real idea of what they look like. Alright, so I will get painting over here and we will see how they perform when we're actually doing a proper painting rather than just a swatching. I started out as I usually do by wetting that background, and then I decided I was going to drop in the darkest of the colours, Prussian blue, lamp black and forest green. I'm painting a betta fish, or a Siamese fighting fish if you prefer, and I just really wanted to give it a lovely dark background. It's actually photographed on a black background, but I wanted to add some colours in. I was really impressed with how much these paints spread on the water, and they dispersed really well, especially into each other. They're such lovely dark colours too. There are some shortcomings with this paint, but for the most part, they behaved very well, and it seems that most of the colours in this set were pretty transparent, which is really great. Now I let that background dry fully before I started in on the fish, and you can see that there is quite a significant colour shift in that they all do get quite a lot lighter, but that's okay. You can go over these again quite easily and layer them up, but I actually left it as it was because I quite liked the patchiness of it, and it brought out some of the granulation in the blue, so I left it at that. And for the better fish, I was trying to use as many colours as I could, so it's a bit of a rainbow spectrum from the violet, magenta, and then going into the reds and yellows. It ended up being a bit of a mess, and its poor little face got a bit wonky by the end, but I'd committed to it now, and I just kept on going. So you could just see the colours are so vibrant, especially those reds and yellows. I really liked them, and they just spread pretty well. Some of them sat onto the paper a lot more than others, but overall they were really nice. Now, I didn't really do much in the way of mixing. I was just using the paints straight from the pans and then going onto the paper. Yeah, I know a lot of people love to do their mixing in palettes beforehand, but I just really wanted to see how the pigments on their own behaved and how they merged into each other on the paper, and I was pretty happy with it. Their only shortcoming is once everything is dry, the paper feels really crusty afterwards, and that's because the paints do have some filler in them and you can really feel it. It's not a very pleasant texture, but that's because you also get spoiled when you use professional paints because they do feel so much nicer on the paper. Anyway, I'll let you watch the rest of this and you can see what a bit of a mess this fishy turned out to be. So here we are, all finished. It didn't come out too badly. The colours are really bright, especially the reds and the yellows in that spectrum. They're really gorgeous. And even the dark blues and greens came out okay. They have faded a lot into the paper, but I imagine that a second layer would probably bring them right out. I just decided that I quite like the patchiness of it in this case, and so I thought I would leave it. And also, I wanted to show you, it kind of looks like the blue has granulation in it, so maybe there's some ultramarine or something in there which would cause that, but you can see in a few spots there's that whiteness, and I think that is filler coming out. There is a bit more patchiness than what I would see in professional paints, but I have seen other student paints which are much worse than this and much chalkier, so these ones came out really well. There's barely anything on the red or the yellow. There's a tiny bit in the pink, just a little bit of white patchiness, but it could just be the paper coming through too. I'm not too sure about that, but it feels, when I'm touching it, quite crusty, and I tend to notice that happens with student paints more than professional paints. It leaves the paper a lot stiffer. I think for $40 this is actually a pretty worthwhile set, although you can see the paint's gone a bit funny now that it's dry. It's gone a little bit grainy, and you definitely wouldn't get that, I don't think, with any professional paints. Overall, for the money, you do get a lot of paint, and I think that these would last quite a long time. I really like it. I love the tin that it's in, and I think as a basic set, but one that's got a decent quality, it's worth the money. So thanks very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it was helpful just to see another product that's out there on the market. And if you're in Australia, you may have seen Zart Art products before, so it's always interesting just to see how they actually work. And I think they're okay. So if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and click that subscribe button, and I will see you all again really soon in my next video. Take care out there, and I'll swatch you later. Bye!